If there is one thing that is literally everywhere in Donkey Kong Bananza, then it is gold. There is gold hidden in the terrain and within the walls. There are explosive gold geysers squirting wealth all over the stages. The enemies are made of gold and so are many bosses. There are golden roots sprouting out of the ground alongside shiny golden nuggets that live in the open. Heck, even the checkpoints in Bananza are covered with a thin layer of precious gold. And all of this gold raises a question, a simple question as old as mankind itself. The simple question of whether it is possible to beat Bananza without ever touching gold. So if you're currently thinking, hold on Ceave, trying to beat Donkey Kong Bananza without ever touching gold sounds like the dumbest idea ever, then you're a wiser man than I am. Holy fuzzy, is it complicated to even make it out of the tutorial in this game without ever touching gold. I've been toying around with the routing for a run like that pretty much since the game was released. I learned the basic speedrun, I studied glitches in the game, I meditated over boss attack patterns and mapped out the geological distribution of gold in the ground, all with a bigger goal in mind. So in this video, we're going on a journey. We'll retrace the steps of my goldless attempt. We'll find out if the game can be beaten while staying broke, and if not, how far into it we can actually make it until we're forced to pick up unwanted riches for the first time. So gentle ladies, gentlemen, and gentle people in general, are you ready? Then let's do this. Alrighty, before we start our desperate attempt to beat Bananza without ever grabbing gold, we first have to have a chat about the rules of our little challenge. So first, what does actually count as us collecting gold today? And the answer is pretty simple. There is a gold counter on the top right of the screen. We collected gold whenever the gold counter increases during normal gameplay. There are no cop-outs today. If the counter increases while we're in control of Donkey Kong, then we failed our sacred challenge and are very sad. Second, what do we do in case of failure? You see, there are simply so many things in the game that could potentially enrich us that no matter what we do, eventually a sneaky little nugget will smuggle itself into our pockets. What do we do then? Well, in that case, we boot up a previous save file, of course. Luckily for us, Bananza features 3 save file slots, which we can freely save into and load out of at any point during a run. The idea is pretty much to save regularly and whenever something goes wrong, to reload a save file in which DK didn't touch gold. This way, we can ensure that we always play on a perfectly impoverished save file and can recover from mistakes. Third, we're not directly running this challenge today. What we are interested in today is figuring out a theoretical routing for such a goldless run. Think about this whole thing today more like a theory crafting challenge. We're interested in figuring out if beating the game goldless is theoretically possible. The question we're interested in today is not whether I personally can pull off this thing, but more if it is theoretically possible to pull this off if we compile the entire knowledge of the entire community. Awesome. Finally, before we hop into our little challenge, let's talk about our enemy and how we plan to deal with it. So what are we up against today? Well, everything. Literally everything in the game is our enemy today. Every enemy is actually gold in disguise. Every wall is filled to the brim with deadly riches. The ground is intoxicated and so are random objects in the environment. But not only our surroundings are trying to shower us in gold today, there is also an enemy within. You see, even Donkey Kong himself is trying to destroy our goldless ambitions. Almost every action that DK takes is a danger to a run. Whenever we punch something, there's a decent chance that the punch is immediately punished. Whenever we jump onto something, we might cause evil gold to pop out of the ground. Rolling can cause sudden spikes in wealth. Turf surfing has the potential to cause gigantic golden chain reactions. Even just landing on the ground from a fall has the potential to kill our run for good. Heck, we can even break gold into deadly pieces just by walking past it. The gold is everywhere and every action we take has the potential to destroy our dreams. So how do we make it through this nightmare safely? How do we play the game if every step has the potential to cause an explosive golden geyser to squirt shiny nuggets out of nowhere? Well, I'm glad you're asking, because after a lot of tinkering and hours of experimentation, I finally came up with a strategy that allows us to somehow safely navigate the nightmare that Bananza stages are. A simple strategy called MMM. So what does MMM stand for? Well, MMM is short for minimal monkey movement, of course. Our best chance to survive the golden onslaught that the game is throwing at us is via a strategy of minimal monkey movement. So what does minimal monkey movement look like? Well, we do not jump if not absolutely necessary. We do not roll, we do not turf surf, we certainly do not punch anything if not required to. We avoid all enemies like they are the golden plague. We just walk from A to B in straight lines and try to minimize all actions we take while doing so, because every action we take has the potential to end in a golden catastrophe. Awesome. So with this we're almost ready to go. There's just one more thing that we have to discuss. What about all the circular bananium chips that are hidden all over the game? Are we allowed to pick those up today? And the answer is obviously yes, because as everyone knows, bananium chips are not made out of gold, but out of banana, and banana is delicious. Hooray! So let's start our run. We load up a save file, skip the cutscene, carefully punch ourselves through the first wall, and already arrive in one of the most dangerous rooms in the entire game. Gentle ladies, gentlemen, and gentle people in general, we just entered the double dig side of death. The double dig side of death is the first gigantic obstacle on our quest today. So why is the double dig side of death called the double dig side of death, I hear you ask? Well, because to reach the next area, we have to dig through 2 layers of deadly terrain. The first layer is made out of soft terrain and requires roughly 10 monkey punches to make it through. The second layer is made out of a hard material and requires several hits to break. The problem? Well, the first layer is filled to the brim with dangerous golden nuggets that are ambushing us, while the second layer contains a single dumb gold nugget in its very center that automatically ends our run as soon as we destroy the layer. Oh and no, how are we ever going to dig ourselves through this mess? Well, that's actually a really good question. Let's talk about the squishy layer first. How do we dig down here without being assaulted by terrible gold? Well, there's only one thing that we can do, isn't there? We obviously have to meticulously cartograph all the stupid shiny nuggets in the ground and plan a digging path through the layer that avoids all of them. And thus I began to map out the golden veins in the ground. I dug up the entire thing, memorized where the dangers were lurking, and laid out a perfectly safe route for us, which we can use to safely dig through the next time. A nicely crafted path that we can reliably use to safely dig through the first layer of the double dig side of death. And thus we return on a different save file to safely dig through the route that we just planned. And then I made a terrifying discovery, a cataclysmic observation that had me scream in agony while shaking in terror. The golden layout had changed. When we loaded our save file, the gold secretly shifted around. There is no gold layout for us to cartograph. The nuggets are always in a different position. The gold is shifting, and I cannot tell you what a tremendous fundamental problem that is. You see, the first layer of the double dig side of death is actually so deep that digging through it without accidentally running into a golden nugget is close to impossible. I dug around here for well over an hour, but we always dig up terrifying treasures. So, is this it? Is this already the end of our little run? Is it over before it has really started? Desperately, I was standing there, hammering into the ground over and over again, but wherever I turned, the ground was just infected with terrible gold. When all of a sudden, I realized something. The gold is playing a trick on us. The gold is trying to get us desperate, hoping that we cancel our run before it even begins. But as a matter of fact, the gold isn't as powerful as it might appear at first glance, because as it turns out, the gold is not randomized at all. The randomness is just a mind trick that the gold is playing on us. As a matter of fact, the golden distribution follows a very logical and predictable pattern. A predictable pattern that we can actually abuse for our own poor ambitions. You see, in truth, there is no gold in the ground. I know that sounds crazy, but bear with me. The truth is that there is not a single golden nugget in this dig site when we arrive here. The gold only gets generated once we start to dig. It's the very act of digging and punching that generates the gold. Only when we destroy terrain does the game spawn in gold, and it generates the gold following a very simple pattern. A very simple pattern that I'd like to call the golden rule of 103100. So what does the golden rule of 103100 actually say? Well, it describes the statistical likeness of gold to spawn whenever we dig. Namely, the chance for gold to spawn during our first act of digging is almost zero. The chance for gold to spawn during our third act of digging is almost 100%. Once gold spawns, the counter is set back to zero. Or, in simpler words, the first time we dig, there is almost never a nugget below us. The second time we dig, the game sometimes spawns one in, and the third time we dig, it is almost guaranteed that the game generates a nugget right below us. Once a nugget has spawned, however, the whole thing is reset. And this is how we actually make it past the terrible double dig side of death. Here's the kicker, it doesn't matter where we dig. The golden rule of 103100 counter is global, which means we can use our first dig that almost never spawns in gold at a certain spot, then go to a different place and use our second and third punch there until the game spawns in gold, which resets the counter and allows us to punch once again with an almost zero gold chance at the place we actually want to dig. All that we have to do is to run back and forth using our safe dig actions at the places we actually want to dig, while using our toxic dig actions at different spots to spawn in the dumb nuggets there. This trick makes digging even through long stretches consistently possible. Using this trick, we can actually make it through the first terrible layer of the double dig side of death. But what about the second layer? The one with the shiny gold piece entrapped in the middle of it? Well, we can actually make it past this layer following the golden rule of 103100 as well. You see, the gold piece in the center actually doesn't matter. If we dig at the corner of the ceiling, we do not collect it. We do, however, have to make sure that the dig action we use to break the ceiling is the first one in a golden rule counter, so that we do not spawn in gold below us right as we destroy the ceiling, because then we would immediately collect gold, of course. And would you look at this? Gentle ladies, gentlemen, and gentle people in general, we did it! We made it past the deadly double dig side, and we're still perfectly broke. We actually made it through the second room of the game. Hooray! So what's next? Well, next, there are several ground switches that devastate the environment and flood the screen with gold. There are dumb walls that dish out gold like crazy. There's a tunnel entirely made of gold in which dangerous enemies are trying to kill us, and so on. Or in other words, the tutorial area continues to be as difficult as it started. Luckily for us, we do not have to deal with any of this stuff, because the room which we just reached features a neat little out of bounds trick. All that we have to do is to climb at this wall beneath this little ledge here, and our monkey clips to the outside of the ingot aisle. Here we can climb upwards until we make it to the ceiling of the stage. Once up there, we can do a pretty tricky trick jump using a FET to make it up to this very spot, and would you believe it, we are now walking on an invisible walkway. If we follow this invisible path to its very end, then we reach the end of the rainbow, which in this case is the end of the tutorial area, allowing us to skip all the headache below. Hooray! We actually did it! We made it to the end of the tutorial and our gold counter is still at 0. All that we had to do was to reverse engineer the gold spawning mechanics and to go out of bounds once. We are off to a really good start. And thus we destroy the banana, trigger the cutscene, skip the cutscene, take control over our monkey once again, and... oh my god. Do you see this? How? Just take a look at our gold counter. It says we collected 0.92 gold pieces. But we didn't. We just triggered the cutscene with exactly 0 gold on our counter. But as we left the cutscene, we're suddenly at 0.92 gold. What is going on here? Like seriously, where did the 0.92 gold come from? And thus, I made a new save file. Quickly ran to the cutscene trigger again, trying to figure out what the heck was going on, and... would you believe it? Once again, the cutscene increased our gold amount, but this time by almost 30 disgusting gold pieces. Yuck. The next attempt, the cutscene ended up adding roughly 10 gold to our total. Every time we trigger this cutscene, we get cursed with a random amount of gold pieces. What is going on here? Where's the gold coming from? It took me ages to figure out what exactly is going on here, but when I finally understood what was happening, I was gasping for air. You see, as it turns out, cutscenes in Donkey Kong Bananza are not merely cutscenes. As a matter of fact, cutscenes are hellish vacuum cleaners that suck up all the gold that is lying around and add it to our gold total without ever asking for our consent. Whenever we trigger a cutscene in Donkey Kong Bananza, the game automatically picks up all the gold that is loosely lying around and adds it to our total. Every cutscene, even tiny ones like the short animation when we activate one of the dig arrow thingies. So theoretically, it is possible to avoid this cutscene gold. You see, loosely lying around gold despawns after a while in Bananza, meaning that if we we just wait for a minute or two before we activate the cutscenes, all the loose gold despawns. This, however, does suck unbelievably, because there are just so many cutscenes during the game, and waiting 2 minutes before activating each and every single one of them is just a lot of not fun. Luckily for us, however, we do not have to do this. You see, if we take a closer look at our rule sheet, then we can clearly see that it is forbidden to increase our gold total during normal gameplay. Cutscenes, however, are by definition scenes that cut through our normal gameplay. Therefore, we do not have to add cutscene gold to the total gold that we ourselves collected, keeping our little run alive and healthy. Hooray! So what's next? Are we finally making some progress? Well, of course not. You see, we are now finding ourselves in a collapsed cave. Right in front of us, another digging section. This time, we have to dig horizontally. To make matters even worse for our goldless dreams, there is a gigantic golden pillar hidden in the ground, which we can't break for very obvious reasons. How do we wiggle ourselves out of this little mess? Well, by using the golden rule of 103-100 once again. Here's how we make it through this area. First, we have to dig to the very top of the tunnel, because luckily for us, the ceiling is high enough to allow us to dig over the evil pillar. And then we punch once or twice into the direction that we actually want to dig to, move into a different direction, and use a third smash in a completely different spot, deliberately spawning in the gold in a direction we never planned to go. We use the same trick as before, allowing us to make it to the cutscene in which the odd rock falls from the sky. Luckily for us, things are now finally becoming a bit easier. You see, so far, the game only took place in tight enclosed spaces, in which we had to do a lot of digging. A nightmare for a precious goldless premise. Now, however, we're finally in an open area for the first time. Navigating open areas is a lot easier for us. As long as we stick to our strategy of minimal monkey movement, we can move across open plains relatively safely, which makes it possible to reach the other rock without any major complications. We grab the rock, follow it, defeat the enemies surrounding it, which fortunately do not drop gold, and finally team up with the second best rock in video gaming history. Next, we have to climb the tower in the center of the layer. Getting up there is once again a bit tricky. So first, the cannon barrel here is unfortunately a trap. If we use it, we're directly shot into a shiny yet golden death. Luckily, this is no big deal, because there's another barrel at the back of the stage that is safe to use. We can skip most of the tower climb, using a couple of simple trick jumps until we reach the final barrels. We can't use those once again, for obvious reasons. Fortunately for us, these barrels can be skipped as well. All that we have to do is to position ourselves at this metal beam thingy and to use a precise fast aerial turf jump into a double jump to get enough height to make it to the top of the platform. Here we can actually defeat the enemy without getting punished with gold. We just have to be careful into which direction we punch it during the killing blow so that it doesn't collide with anything, and would you believe it? We actually completed an entire layer without any golden incidents at all. Hooray! Which already brings us to the Lagoon layer. What problems are waiting for impoverished monkey and stone duet on this fascinating layer? Well, fewer than on the previous. So first, we can entirely skip the first sublayer by just going around the backside until we reach a hidden arrow layup thingy. Neat. We won't do much of the next layer either. We can skip the entire water raising shemozzle with a nice little trick jump to immediately get to the Elder. We focus on MMM while recovering the ancient disc, and here we are, never having increased the gold counter during gameplay, already transforming our beloved stone into a Disney princess and learning the Kong Bananza, as if we were playing the game in the intended way. And with this, we already face the next puzzle that we have to solve, because the next section is once again a digging section, and digging sections are bad and they make me sad. The game wants us to now use the destructive powers of our newly learned Kong Bananza to destroy several concrete walls and to batter up goldified crocodiles in an area filled with terrible golden geysers ready to lethally squirt at us as soon as we make the tiniest of mistakes. How do we make it through this terrible dig site, I hear you ask? Well, here's the thing. We don't. Screw this cursed place, we're going to skip it. Check this out. The digging section would normally lead us to a layer progressing arrow key thingy that is hidden here behind the containers. We can actually see this arrow through those metal beams up there, which is exactly how we're going to skip it. If we climb on the wall, then we can actually grab one of those metal beams from behind and climb on the back of it. If we now slowly climb alongside the back of the beam, we actually push into an invisible barrier that is preventing us from reaching the layer progressing arrow key thingy of our desire. How rude of this invisible barrier. Let's show this barrier who is the alpha ape around here. All that we have to do is to pull out the picture mode while pushing into the barrier over and over again. It's a bit finicky, but if done correctly, opening the picture mode pushes us ever so slightly into the barrier until eventually, hooray, we actually clip through, allowing us to skip the entire digging section altogether. Just as a side note, this little glitch can actually be used to skip transforming the odd rock into Pauline entirely. We can even continue to the next sublayer without undergoing the planned Disneyfication of our awesome rock. But sadly, the boss on the next layer does not load in if we skip Pauline earlier. This very boss is actually the next big problem on our path. But before we face this problem, there is actually even another problem right in front of us. Yes, I know, a very problematic run today. The layer progressing arrow key thingy. You see, this layer progressing arrow key thingy is no normal layer progressing arrow key thingy. Oh no, it is something darker. As a matter of fact, this layer progressing arrow key thingy is the first cursed layer progressing arrow key thingy on our run. So what evil curse has struck the poor layer progressing arrow key thingy, I hear you ask? Well, it blemishes all sacred goldless runs with 3 dumb golden nuggets if a monkey hits it. For whatever reason, Nintendo decided to have the arrow dish out gold as soon as we punch it. How rude! Unfortunately, punching this layer progressing arrow key thingy is absolutely required to progress in the game. This thingy is the only thingy that allows us to reach the next layer. So is this the end of our goldless ambitions? Well, not quite yet, because we can wiggle ourselves out of this little mess by getting a bit creative. You see, our challenge run rules are pretty clear. Every instance in which gold is added to our counter during gameplay counts as us failing at being poor. If we hit the arrow while playing normally, the gold jumps out and is added to our total. However, what if we were to destroy the arrow in such a way that the gold is added to our counter during a cutscene and not during gameplay? If we were to pull this off, we would theoretically still be within our own rule set. So is it possible to destroy the layer progressing arrow key thing in such a way, I hear you ask? Well, yes. If we transform into the Kong Bananza, then we can actually devastate the key by punching it with a charged punch. This way, the count increases during the cutscene, allowing us to proceed. Hooray! So, I know what at least one of you is currently wondering. Isn't counting this gold as being added during a cutscene us spending the rule set a bit so that the really interesting run doesn't die because of a dumb layer progressing arrow key thingy? To which I'd like to reply, absolutely not. All of this is obviously scientifically accurate, and I can assure you that all of this has been thoroughly reviewed by a supervisory committee. So this settles that. Up we go to our very first boss fight, the fight against Pika Bruiser. And Pika Bruiser isn't messing around. Here's what we're up against. Pika Bruiser is entirely made out of tiny, little, colorful golden nuggets. Those little bright nuggets, however, are no normal nuggets. They are animated. A terrible spirit haunts those little guys. The nuggets' only goal in life, well, getting murdered by a monkey, of course. Because as soon as we defeat one of those annoying little color nuggets, we immediately get punished with gold. We can't defeat a single one of them, which makes this boss fight incredibly complicated to pull off because Pika Bruiser floods the whole arena with those dumb little waddling guys, which means we have to find a way to blow up the dumb quadratic guy without accidentally murdering any of his hundreds waddling companions. And that's only the first problem. The second one? Well, once we finally blow Pika Bruiser into small little pieces, we still have to actually destroy his dangerous golden heart. You see, there's a second phase to this boss fight. Now Pika Bruiser creates a hill in the middle of the arena and calls all his annoying little minions back to daddy to slowly recover from all the damage that we dealt to him before. We have to climb the tower and beat the devil out of this dumb mechanical heart before all the possessed gold nuggets can reunite. The problem here? Well, the golden heart squirts out toxic gold pieces whenever we hit it because of course it does. So is this finally it? Has the game finally broken us? Is this the end of this little challenge? Well, maybe. But we're certainly not going without a fight. You see, our situation might not be as hopeless as it at first appears, because we got one ace up our monkey sleeves, 2 explosive balls that are hidden in the arena, 2 balls that we can use to our advantage. If we grab one of those balls and position ourselves right in front of Pika Bruiser as he's about to crash into us, then we can deal massive damage to him with a simple throw. This little trick allows us to safely reach the second phase of the boss fight. But what now? How do we defeat the evil heart without becoming tainted by one of the cursed golden droplets that it spits out in pain? Well, here's how. First, we have to get up to the heart really fast so that we avoid all the little nuggets. Once up there, we actually jump on top of the heart, and instead of hitting it with a normal strike, we now smash it with a downward punch. And another one. And one more, over and over again. You see, as it turns out, it is actually possible to juggle on top of bosses by quickly chaining downward punches into each other, allowing us to stay on top of the boss. So on top actually, that all the golden droplets fly past us, making it possible to defeat the evil square without ever coming in contact with gold. So gentle ladies, gentlemen, and all you generally gentle people, we actually defeated the first boss and still haven't collected a single gold piece during gameplay. Who and Ray. Somehow, this run is still going. Next up, the Hilltop layer. Oh dear, the god-forsaken Hilltop layer. The Hilltop layer does not merely confront us with one problem, it confronts us with 2,999 problems at once. Here's the thing, to leave the Hilltop layer, we have to pay a blood tribute of 2,999 gold pieces. Only once this toll is paid, the exit opens up. So the bad news first. It is currently not possible to skip the payment. This illegal 2,999 gold bribery is actually one of the most looked into things in the entire game, because it makes the early routing of the speedrun a nightmare. But even though the entire speedrunning community has been throwing their collective destructive force against this barrier, we still haven't found a way to skip this corrupt bribe. However, this forsaken payment might still not be the end of our run. You see, by our own definition, we fail the run as soon as the gold counter increases during normal gameplay. We can't collect gold. However, we might be able to obtain the necessary 2,999 gold pieces via other means. And this is the very moment where this entire operation becomes a bit stupid and tedious. For a moment. You see, there is a way in the game to obtain gold while not being in normal gameplay. And those are the gold finds that the game dishes out as punishment for us destroying the entire stages. There is a tracker in the menu that tracks how much good environment we destroyed so far. And once this distraction hits a certain threshold, we are punished with an increasingly escalating amount of gold. It's 100 gold first, then 200, and finally 300 gold pieces for a total of 600 per type of terrain. So if we were to find 5 renewable terrain types and actually manage to smash them over and over again without increasing our gold total while doing so, then, at least in theory, we should be able to hit the 3000 gold using the menu tracker, allowing us to get the required gold outside of normal gameplay. So I already called our overview committee, and after a thorough investigation and intensive and expensive counseling with our lawyers, they fortunately confirmed to me that this, as a matter of fact, would be totally objectively legally within our own rule set, which only raises one final question. How do we destroy enough terrain to hit the threshold without grabbing unwanted shiny during the process? And this is where the tedious enters the stage. You see, as we know by now, nuggets are only spawned in when we destroy terrain. There is no gold in the ground to begin with. So if we were to only ever destroy the top layer of a surface, then we never get gold for doing so, as the gold always spawns in below us. Or in other words, we have to run around for hours and punch single holes into the grass, the dirt and the mud until we eventually have caused enough mayhem to finally be penalized with the gold toll, which takes several hours to do. So if you happen to ever actually run this run, I'd recommend to put on your favorite podcast in the background while doing this, or to rewatch every single Mario Maker video I ever did, or maybe meditative music if that's more of your thing, and then to smash ahead. So is this dumb? Obviously, but we're up against the shiniest and most evil gold pieces in history of video games. If the only way to defeat them is via extraordinary stupidity, then so be it. Hooray! We actually found a way to pay the payment required to escape the Hilltop layer. Against all odds, we still never increased the coin counter during gameplay. The canyon layer is next, and it is the canyon layer that finally manages to defeat us. Unfortunately for us, on this layer our run finally dies. So what is the problem here? Well, it takes a while until we actually run into it. At first, we just adhere to MMM and carefully move around the stage. We can easily skip 2 boss battles goldless by using the infamous canyon trick jump, which allows us to reach the final boss of this layer. But this boss finally marks the end of our dreams. Stomp and Clumper just stomps our goldless ambitions. So how does Stomp and Clumper stomp our run? Well, we're using a very simple and evil trick. Whenever we damage Stomp and Clumper, we are punished with gold. But unlike during the fight against Pika Bruiser, this time the gold does not squirt outwards, but is directly added to our total. There is literally nothing that we can do. Any damage that we deal to Stomp and Clumper immediately causes an unwanted wealth transfer. It doesn't matter how the damage is dealt. Stomp and Clumper is the first instance in which the game forces us to pick up gold during gameplay. So, is it possible to beat Donkey Kong Bananza without ever touching gold? Sadly no. The first time we are forced to increase our gold total during gameplay is during the Stomp and Clumper fight. However, I have to admit, we got a lot further into the game than I ever anticipated. We reverse engineered the way gold spawns in during digging, clipped through walls and wandered beyond normal boundaries in places that no ape was ever supposed to reach. We dug through seemingly impossible tunnels and survived the battle for the ages against an evil quadratic foe. While we weren't able to win our little attempt today, I think attempting this actually revealed a ton of interesting aspects of the game, making this whole endeavor worth it in the end. So, I know what at least one of you is currently wondering. But what about the rest of the game? It might not be possible to beat Bananza without touching gold, but what is the absolute minimum amount of gold required to beat it? Is it possible to make it through the other layers goldless? How many bosses can actually be defeated broke? Is it possible to dig through the landfill layer without any shiny accidents, or to survive the Kremlin Colosseum? How many Bananzas can we get without adding additional gold to the total? And most importantly, is it possible to defeat Pika Bruiser goldless during the rematch? Well, in case you're wondering all of that, I've got good news for you and bad news. The bad news is that this is actually the end of this little video. We're not going to investigate this question further today. Why not? Well, that's actually because of the good news, because I already routed the entire game trying to figure out the minimum amount of gold required to beat it. I originally intended to cover all of this in one video. The only problem, well, there is so much still ahead of us to discuss that this video would end up being far over an hour long, which strikes me as a bit unreasonable for a challenge run video. So I decided to do the reasonable thing for once and split the video in two. Today we discussed whether it is generally possible to beat the game goldless, and in a couple of weeks we'll investigate the absolute minimum gold required to beat the entire game. If you're a bit worried because of me all of a sudden acting reasonable for once, don't worry, I promise that's a one-time thingy. Awesome, so before we wrap this up, just two more things. So first, a gigantic thank you to all my wonderful patrons whose names are currently scrolling by. The wonderful people currently flapping by not only regularly get access to bonus content and small little extra scripts, but their generous support is also the fueling investigations about whether the monkey has to pick up the shiny, like this one. A huge thank you to them for that. Second, we need to waffle about something here so that we all have something nice to listen to while the names of those wonderful people flap by. But I got nothing today. Absolutely nothing. So I thought, let's just rank Donkey Kong Bananza's enemies by how closely they resemble a fuzzy as a change of pace. So the normal stone wobble crocodile enemies, well, they have a certain undefinedness in their visual design that I quite like, as well as two huge eyes in the center. To me, they look like 3 fuzzies out of 5 fuzzies, like a fuzzy. What about the crocodiles in the TNT barrel that we encounter towards the end of the game? Well, at first glance, those don't have many fuzzy qualities in their design, do they? However, if we look closely at them, we can see a similar beautiful madness in their eyes. 2 fuzzies for fuzzy likeness it is. The bee enemies, 1 fuzzy. The bees just look nothing like a fuzzy. Bad for them. What about the little annoying waddling gold nuggets that are actually named Pika Poopoids? Well, they're relentless, they're cute, and their eyes are looking directly into our souls. 4 fuzzies for fuzzy likeness. Finally, what about squealoids? Well, that is obvious. They look 5 out of 5 fuzzies like a fuzzy. Such a beautiful enemy. I love them. Hooray! So thank you so much for watching this little video, I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to leave me a thumbs up and maybe feel especially goldless today and want to hit the subscribe button as well. Finally, if you truly loved the video and want to support content like this, then there's also the option to support the channel via Patreon. See you next time, lots of hugs.